She was just a girl with a microphone and a dream. Lila stood in the subway like she did every weekend, but today was different. When her tiny voice rose into a song her mother once sang, the entire crowd stopped. Then two strangers at the back began to cry. Moments later, they stepped forward, and everything Lila thought she knew about her life shattered. Who were they, and why did her father look like he'd seen a ghost? Every Saturday morning, Lila clutched a dented microphone and took her place on the corner of the 14th Street subway station. 9 years old, with tangled curls and shoes too big for her feet, she sang into a cracked speaker while her father, Samuel, kept time with a soft tap on his guitar case. It wasn't glamorous. People walked past. Some threw coins, others didn't look. But Lila didn't seem to care. She sang like it meant everything. Like it was the only way to breathe. She didn't have a stage. Just cold tiles, flickering lights, and the steady rumble of trains. Her voice, though, it didn't match her body. It was older, sadder, full of something most people couldn't name. The few who paused often looked confused, as if trying to make sense of the sound coming from such a small girl. Her voice wasn't loud, but it filled every inch of the station. It wasn't perfect either. Sometimes she missed notes or stumbled over lyrics, but the feeling behind every word glued people in place. Samuel, her father, never said much. He would lean back against the column, cap pulled low, a tired face hiding behind worry lines. He always carried a small red notebook in his pocket. Every time Lila finished a song, he'd write something in it. No one knew what. Some thought he was her manager. Others figured he was just an overprotective dad. But the way he watched her, like she was the last light in his world, said more than words ever could. Lila's usual playlist included old jazz songs, soul ballads, and sometimes lullabies. Songs her mother used to sing to her, songs she barely remembered but somehow still felt deep in her chest. Her favorite was Where the Light Falls, a tune no one recognized. She said it made her feel like her mom was still around. Samuel never smiled when she sang that one. He'd grip the edge of the guitar case and stare straight ahead like he was bracing for something. One weekend, a street magician performed just a few feet away. His loud tricks and fire bursts drew a crowd that made Lila's usual audience disappear. Samuel suggested they move. But Lila shook her head. "We stay," she whispered. "The song still matters." She sang anyway. The notes came out thinner this time, swallowed by the noise. Her eyes darted to the people not paying attention. It hurt, but she kept singing. One older woman stopped and whispered something to her husband. They left a folded note in her case. It read, "You're singing something I didn't know I needed. Thank you." That night, Lila sat cross-legged in their small apartment above a laundromat. She pulled the coins from her case, counted them with care, and handed them to Samuel. "We made enough for groceries." Samuel looked away. He never wanted her to worry about money. But Lila always saw more than people thought. She knew when he skipped dinner. She knew when the electric bill was past due. She knew they were running on more than just dreams. Still, each week, they returned to the station. Rain or shine, cold or heat. Samuel would set up the little speaker, and Lila would test the mic. She always started with a soft hum before singing. "It helps me find the note," she explained. One morning, she hummed a little longer than usual. "You okay?" Samuel asked. She nodded. "I just feel like today's going to be big." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. The subway station was quieter that morning. No magician. No loud vendors. Just the hum of trains and the occasional shuffle of shoes. Lila looked up at her dad. "Can I sing that song?" He hesitated. "Lila, you know what it does to me." She placed a hand on his arm. "Please. Just this once." Samuel nodded slowly. "Okay. Just this once." She stepped up to the mic and closed her eyes. Her fingers trembled, but she took a deep breath. Then, as if pulled from the memory of someone long gone, she began to sing. A few people turned their heads. Then more. By the end of the first verse, a small crowd had formed. But none of them saw what Samuel saw. Two figures in dark coats at the edge of the crowd, frozen in place and crying. Before the subway songs, before the red notebook and cold tiles, there was once a small living room filled with warmth, music, and dreams. Lila's mother, Rachel, had a voice that could make people cry without knowing why. She was a singer, not famous yet, but those who heard her swore she would be. Her songs played softly in the apartment as she cooked, cleaned, and rocked baby Lila to sleep. Samuel used to watch her from the doorway, smiling like he had everything he ever wanted in one room. Rachel sang to Lila every night, and the baby would fall asleep with a calmness that made the world feel safe. Rachel was preparing for a big audition when it happened. She had been offered a last-minute spot to sing for a well-known record label executive. It was the break she had dreamed of. She kissed Lila's forehead that morning, promised she would be back by dinner, and walked out the door with her guitar case in hand and hope in her heart. But she never came back. A drunk driver ran a red light at an intersection downtown. The crash took her life instantly. The guitar case was found a few feet away, crushed and broken, just like Samuel's heart. Samuel stopped playing music after that. For months, he couldn't even touch the guitar. Their apartment grew quiet, the kind of quiet that hurts your ears. Lila, only 4 years old, didn't understand why her mom stopped singing or why Daddy cried when he thought she wasn't looking. Sometimes Lila would hum the song she remembered, soft little notes in the hallway or behind the door, hoping it would bring her mom back. Samuel never told her to stop. But every time she sang, he would leave the room. Eventually, Samuel sold most of their things. He quit his job as a studio tech and took up shifts at a late-night warehouse. Bills piled up. The apartment shrank in spirit even though the walls never moved. Still, through all of it, Lila kept singing. She didn't do it for attention. She did it because something inside her told her she had to. It was like breathing. Like remembering. One rainy evening when Lila was 6, she sat on the floor with a pile of her mom's old sheet music. The pages were yellowed, some stained with coffee rings, others with notes scribbled in the margins. Samuel found her trying to sound out the words of a song Rachel had written by hand. It was titled Where the Light Falls. Lila looked up and asked, "Can you help me sing it?" Samuel shook his head at first. But something about the way she asked, or maybe the way she held that paper like it was sacred, made him sit down beside her. He took out the guitar he hadn't touched in 2 years. His fingers trembled as he tuned it. Lila watched every move. She didn't speak. She just waited. He strummed the first chord, and for a moment, the air in the room changed. Lila began to sing. Her voice was small, a little off-key, but full of emotion. Samuel didn't cry, not then. But he wrote something in the red notebook that night. Something he never showed anyone. From that day forward, they began practicing every evening. Music slowly filled the apartment again. Not with the same warmth, but with something close. A quiet kind of healing. They started going to the subway when Lila turned 8. Samuel thought maybe it would help her build confidence, help her get used to performing. But it was more than that. He wanted people to hear Rachel again, through Lila. Every time Lila sang one of her mother's songs, strangers stopped. Some smiled. Some cried. A few even left little gifts, a bracelet, a drawing, once even a pair of brand new shoes in Lila's size. Still, Samuel never let Lila stay too long. He always checked the time, kept her on a schedule. And whenever someone tried to film her, he'd gently ask them to stop. He said it was about safety. That the world didn't need to see everything. But the truth was heavier. He was afraid. Afraid that if the world saw her, someone might come asking questions he wasn't ready to answer. There were doctor visits no one knew about. Quiet conversations with specialists. Medical bills hidden in drawers. Samuel knew something about Lila that Lila didn't yet understand. Her voice, as beautiful as it was, came with risks. Her vocal cords had small nodules forming, not dangerous yet, but something that could grow worse with overuse. The doctor warned him to be careful. "She's young," he said. "Too much strain could damage her voice permanently. Maybe even cause long-term issues." Samuel nodded, took the pamphlets, and promised to watch over her. But how do you tell a child not to sing when singing is the only thing keeping her spirit alive? So Samuel made rules. Only 2 songs per session. No screaming. Warm up first. Rest days in between. Lila followed the rules without asking why. She trusted her dad. He never gave her a reason not to. Still, she sometimes snuck in a third song. Or hummed too long. Or practiced in secret while he was at work. The music called to her in ways she couldn't explain. It was like her mom was still trying to speak through her, and Lila didn't want to miss a single word. That's why, when she asked to sing Where the Light Falls again that morning, Samuel hesitated. He thought of the doctor's warnings. Of the pain she sometimes mentioned in her throat but quickly brushed off. Of how the last time she sang it, she needed 2 days of silence to recover. But he looked at her eyes just like Rachel's, and he couldn't say no. So she sang. And the notes echoed through the station like ghosts returning home. Neither of them saw what was about to happen next. They didn't know the song would find its way into two hearts still broken from a tragedy of their own. The subway that morning carried a stillness that didn't match the usual rush. It was as if something unseen had asked the city to hold its breath. The trains still came and went. Announcements echoed through the station. But there was a hush in the air, like the calm before a storm that no one could see coming. Samuel stood quietly near the edge of the platform, adjusting the mic cord while Lila warmed up with a soft hum. Her eyes were half closed, hands clutched at her stomach like she was holding something delicate inside her chest. When she finally opened her mouth to sing, the moment felt heavy, like something important had just begun. The first few notes of Where the Light Falls rose into the air like smoke from a candle. Soft, warm, and full of memory. Her voice didn't rush. It moved gently, like a story being told by someone who lived it. There were no flashy runs or loud notes. Just raw, steady emotion that touched the walls and slid along the floor like water. A man holding a coffee cup paused. A woman in a hurry to catch a train stopped mid-step. Another person on a bench put their phone down and looked up. One by one, strangers turned to face her, drawn in by something they didn't fully understand. The platform grew quiet. You could hear the drip of water from a ceiling pipe, the rustle of a coat, the slow exhale of someone forgetting they were even breathing. A small boy clutched his mother's hand and stared with wide eyes. Even the rats near the tracks seemed to disappear. It was like time bent itself around the sound of her voice. Samuel watched the growing crowd from the side. He'd seen people react before, but not like this. Not with this kind of stillness. Usually, someone clapped too early or talked over her. But now, even the air felt like it was listening. As Lila reached the chorus, her voice cracked just slightly. Not from a mistake, but from feeling. It gave the song an ache that made people blink faster, trying not to cry in front of strangers. Her hands were shaking now, but she kept singing. Each word felt like it came from somewhere far deeper than a child should ever know. She closed her eyes and lifted her chin as the melody swelled, her small body trembling as if it could barely contain the sound. At the edge of the crowd, two figures stood still. A man and a woman, both in dark coats, sunglasses resting on their heads, looking like they didn't belong underground. They were tall, calm, and silent. At first, they looked like commuters. But then the woman brought her hand to her mouth. Her shoulders shook. Tears streamed down her cheeks, and she didn't wipe them away. The man beside her clenched his jaw, his eyes glassy, fists tight at his sides like he was holding something back. They didn't speak. They just stood there, frozen in place. Samuel noticed them. At first, he thought they were just more people moved by the song. But then he saw how still they were. Not stiff with surprise, but rooted. Like trees that had just been struck by lightning. He turned back to Lila, now reaching the final verse, her voice barely more than a whisper. But that whisper carried the weight of 1,000 goodbyes. The woman in the coat took a small step forward. Then another. The man followed. Their eyes never left Lila. As she sang the last word, the last note held just a second longer than it should have, a sound so pure it seemed to stretch across lifetimes. The station remained silent. No one clapped. No one moved. They were all caught in that one suspended moment, afraid that breaking the silence would make it vanish. Then the sound of a train approaching snapped the crowd back to life. People slowly blinked, looked at each other, unsure of what they had just felt. Someone finally whispered, "Who is she?" But no one had an answer. Even the station guards, who usually kept a close eye on performers, stayed at a distance, as if something holy had just taken place. Samuel rushed over to Lila, wrapping his coat around her. She looked pale, a little dizzy, but proud. "Did I do okay?" she asked. Samuel crouched down, brushed her hair back, and nodded. "You did more than okay." She leaned against him, her breath slowing. He didn't say anything about the shaking in her hands or how she had pushed her voice too far. He didn't want to ruin the moment. Not yet. The woman in the coat stepped forward. She removed her sunglasses and wiped her face. Her eyes were red. "Excuse me," she said softly. Samuel stood up, placing himself slightly in front of Lila. "Can I help you?" he asked, guarded. The man behind her took off his coat, revealing a sleek navy blazer. Around his neck hung a lanyard with a familiar symbol, gold music notes surrounding a microphone. Samuel's eyes narrowed. He'd seen that emblem before. It belonged to Voices Rising, the nation's biggest televised singing competition. The woman spoke again. "I'm sorry to intrude. We weren't supposed to be here today. But we heard the music while passing through. We thought it was a recording at first. Then we stopped. And now," her voice trailed off. She looked at Lila, who was peeking out from behind her father. "She reminds me of someone we lost," the woman said quietly. "A finalist. Years ago. She passed before the finale. But that song, it was her favorite." Samuel's face tightened. "This song was written by my wife." The man stepped forward, his voice low and steady. "We know. Rachel Carter. She auditioned with that song 15 years ago. We never forgot her." Samuel went still. Lila looked up at him, confused. "They knew Mom," she whispered. The woman knelt down slowly. "Your mom was going to win," she said. "She had something that couldn't be taught. Just like you." Lila blinked. Her lips parted, but no sound came. Samuel felt the weight of the moment pressing against him. The song, the crowd, the silence, it had all led to this. And now, the past was no longer behind them. It was standing right in front of them, in the form of two judges whose tears told a story no one had expected. The station didn't return to normal right away. Even after the train passed and the crowd began to shuffle off, something in the air had shifted. It was like everyone knew they had witnessed a moment that didn't belong to this world. The kind you don't get back. The woman judge rose to her feet, her eyes never leaving Lila, while her partner stood beside her, shoulders stiff, jaw clenched. They didn't need to say much. Their expressions held the kind of emotion only seen in people who carry a wound that never quite healed. Samuel, suddenly aware of who they were, instinctively stepped in front of Lila again, gently placing his hand on her shoulder like a quiet warning. He didn't trust fame. He especially didn't trust promises that came too easily. The woman held up her hands. "Please. We're not here to push anything," she said gently. "We just couldn't walk away without telling her what she did." She reached into her coat and pulled out a small envelope, the kind usually handed to contestants after private auditions. "We've been scouting for the next season of Voices Rising," she explained. "And we weren't supposed to be here. This was just a detour after a long morning meeting. We were grabbing lunch. But then we heard that voice." Lila clutched her coat tighter, unsure what to do. She didn't fully understand who they were, only that they somehow knew her mom, and that they had cried while she sang. Samuel said nothing. His silence was a wall, tall and firm. The male judge stepped forward, his voice low and calm. "You don't need to decide anything today," he said. "We just want to talk. That's all." Samuel didn't move. His eyes locked with the man's. Years of pain, worry, and fear flickered behind them. "Talk about what?" he finally said. The woman looked down at the envelope in her hand. "About the chance to give your daughter a stage," she said. "A real one. With lights, and cameras, and millions of people watching. The kind of stage your wife never got to stand on. We remember Rachel. And hearing Lila today felt like hearing her again. Like a second chance." Samuel's throat tightened. He hadn't expected to hear Rachel's name from anyone else's lips today. let alone from two people who had once promised her the future she never got to see. Lila looked up at him. Dad, is it true? Did Mom sing for them? Samuel hesitated, then nodded. She did. A long time ago. Before she had you. Lila's eyes sparkled with a mixture of wonder and sadness. Did she sing the same song? Yes, he said softly. She wrote it for that audition. Lila turned back to the judges. And you remember her? The woman's voice cracked. We never forgot her. When we lost her, it felt like a piece of the show's soul went with her. Samuel stepped closer, lowering his voice. This isn't just about a stage, he said. This is about exposure. Pressure. Media. My daughter doesn't need that kind of weight right now. The male judge nodded, understanding. Of course. But it's also about opportunity. She has something rare. Something real. And if she wants it, we're willing to fast-track her to the blind auditions. No lines. No waiting. Just her and the stage. Samuel's hands curled into fists. He had spent years protecting her from that very world. From the glare of cameras, the claws of contracts, the false kindness of strangers who saw talent before they saw the person. But most of all, he had protected her from hope, because hope was what shattered Rachel. The woman took a step back. We'll give you space, she said. Just take the envelope. Think about it. Talk to her. You don't have to call us. If it's meant to happen, it will. She set the envelope on top of Lila's small speaker and turned away. The man followed, but just before leaving, he glanced back and said, some voices are meant to be heard by the world. And some only come around once. They disappeared into the crowd, leaving behind a silence thicker than before. Samuel picked up the envelope slowly, turning it over in his hands like it was something dangerous. Lila tugged at his coat. Do you think I should do it? She asked. He didn't answer. Not yet. His mind was racing through every warning, every doctor's note, every sleepless night he had spent listening for signs that her voice was in trouble. He thought about Rachel, about how much she had wanted this life. And how it had taken everything from her. That night, they sat together in the apartment. The envelope sat untouched on the table between them. Lila traced the edge with her finger. What if I just try? She asked. Just once. Samuel looked at her and saw so much of Rachel that it made his chest hurt. It's not that simple, he said. It never is. Lila tilted her head. You always said Mom believed in going after her dreams. She did, he whispered. But she also didn't have you to think about. Lila stood up and walked to the window, staring down at the glowing city lights. Maybe this isn't just her dream anymore, she said. Maybe it's mine too. Samuel closed his eyes. He could feel the world slipping out of his control. He had fought so hard to keep her safe. To shield her from everything. But she wasn't a baby anymore. She was growing. Becoming her own voice. He looked at the envelope again, still sealed, still waiting. Lila turned around. If I sing again, really sing, would that be okay? Samuel's voice broke as he answered, only if you promise to let me be scared every step of the way. She smiled, small and sad. Deal. They didn't know then that someone had filmed the performance. That the video was already being shared online. That before the sun rose, Lila's voice would be heard by thousands. Then millions. And that the world was already waiting. By the next morning, everything had changed. The subway performance that was meant to be a private moment between a father, his daughter, and a quiet crowd of strangers had reached the world. Someone had filmed the entire thing. The video had been posted online overnight with the caption, "Little girl sings her late mother's song in subway, judges cry." It spread fast. People were sharing it across every platform, commenting on the way her voice seemed to carry something more than music. They called her the ghost singer, the girl with the soul voice, and the echo of a dream. By sunrise, it had crossed 1 million views. By noon, it had reached 10 million. Offers started pouring in. Local news wanted interviews. Talk shows sent emails. Talent agencies made phone calls Samuel never answered. But one offer didn't come through a screen. It came through the front door. The knock was soft, like the person on the other side already knew it wasn't welcome. Samuel opened it slowly, already exhausted, already on edge. It was the two judges again. No cameras. No team. Just them. They looked different in daylight. Less polished, more human. The woman spoke first. "We know this is overwhelming. We didn't expect it either. But we came because the producers saw the video. They want her on the show. Now." Samuel stepped outside and pulled the door shut behind him. He didn't want Lila to hear. Not yet. The man held up a folder, thick with papers and tabs. "It's not just an invitation. It's a contract. A featured spot on the season's premiere. She wouldn't have to compete in the early rounds. They'd open the season with her." Samuel didn't even look at the folder. "She's 9, he said flatly. "She still plays with sidewalk chalk. She has homework and bedtime and favorite cartoons." The woman nodded. "We know. But we've also never seen something like this. Not since your wife." Samuel's jaw clenched. "And look where that got her." The woman's face fell. "We're not trying to hurt her. We want to help." Samuel shook his head. "You want to help your show. Your ratings. You want a story to open with. You want tears and drama and a sweet little voice that makes people feel something before they go back to their lives. But you don't know her. You don't know what singing takes from her." The man stepped forward. "Then help us understand. What are you not telling us?" Samuel hesitated. His fingers twitched at his side. For a moment, he wanted to scream, to rip the folder and throw it into the street. But then he looked back through the window. Lila was sitting at the table, gently humming, tracing hearts on her notebook. She was happy. She was still a child. He turned back to them. "She has vocal nodules. Small, but they're there. Every time she sings hard, she risks damaging her voice. We have to monitor her. She can't do back-to-back songs. Can't push too hard. And sometimes she's in pain, but she hides it. Because she thinks singing is all she has left of her mom." The woman's face went pale. The man lowered the folder. "We didn't know," he said. "Of course you didn't," Samuel replied. "You only see what's on the outside. The miracle child. The prodigy. But I see what's underneath. I see the tired eyes when the music fades. The sore throat. The guilt when she thinks she let me down." His voice cracked. "And I can't watch her break. Not for a stage. Not for applause." They didn't argue. They didn't push. The woman simply handed over a card. "We'll wait," she said. "You don't have to call. But if she ever wants it, the door stays open." They left quietly, their shoes making almost no sound on the pavement. Samuel stayed at the door for a long time, staring at the card like it was a time bomb. That night, he sat Lila down. He didn't tell her everything. Just enough. "They want you to sing on TV," he said. "But I said no." Lila's face dropped. "Why?" she whispered. Samuel took her hand. "Because it might hurt you. And I'd rather the world never hear your voice again than watch it take away your smile." Lila said nothing for a while. She sat there, small and still. Then she looked at him and asked, "Is that what Mom would have wanted?" The question hit him like a punch. He didn't answer. He couldn't. The truth was, he didn't know. Rachel had chased her dream until it killed her. But she'd also been full of joy, fire, and belief. Would she have let their daughter be afraid of the world? Or would she have told her to sing anyway? The next day, Lila didn't sing. She didn't hum. She just watched the rain through the window, quiet and distant. Samuel watched her too, torn between pride and panic. That night, he found her in bed, eyes wide open. "If I promised to be careful," she asked, "would you let me try?" He sat beside her, brushing her hair back. "I don't want you to hurt." "I already hurt," she said softly. "When I don't sing." That was the moment he realized it wasn't just about her voice. It was about her heart. Singing wasn't the danger. Silence was. He didn't sleep that night. He stayed up reading the contract, highlighting clauses, circling red flags. And when morning came, he placed a single note in her lunchbox. It read, "One song. Only one. If it ever hurts, we stop. No questions. Deal." Lila found it at school and smiled. The choice had been made. Not by a judge. Not by a producer. But by a little girl who had every reason to stay quiet, and chose instead to be heard. The studio was bigger than anything Lila had ever seen. Lights hung from the ceiling like stars frozen in place. Cameras moved quietly on smooth wheels. The floor gleamed under her small feet, polished to perfection. She stood center stage, a single spotlight casting a soft glow around her. The seats were still empty. The performance wasn't live yet, but rehearsals were underway. Technicians adjusted sound levels while crew members whispered behind clipboards. Her father sat off to the side, nerves etched deep into his face. He hadn't let her out of his sight all morning. He was trying to stay calm, trying to keep it together, but every part of him felt like it was holding back a flood. Lila looked down at the microphone in her hand. It was heavier than the one she used in the subway. Sleek. Cold. Official. She could feel the weight of the moment pressing against her chest. But she didn't flinch. She closed her eyes and took a slow breath. Only one song, she whispered to herself. That was the deal. One song. If it hurt, she'd stop. If she got scared, her father would be there. But if she could just hold the notes the way she knew how, just one more time, maybe something good would come from it all. The show aired at 8. The producers had built the entire season premiere around her story. Clips from the subway performance. Footage of the judges crying. Soft music playing under photos of her mother. Interviews with Samuel. Tightly edited. But the producers didn't know everything. They didn't know the full story of Rachel's death. They didn't know about the nodules. They didn't know how close Lila had come to giving it all up. And they didn't know what she had written in her little notebook the night before the show. One sentence repeated over and over, "I want to sing for her." As the countdown ticked to 0, the audience filled in. Seats were packed. Cameras rolled. Stage lights shifted. The judges took their places. The host gave a short introduction, his voice full of drama and praise. Then the lights dimmed. The screen behind the stage went dark. A hush fell across the room. And then, a single spotlight returned. Lila stepped forward, alone. She looked smaller on the stage than she had in the subway. But when she opened her mouth, the sound was anything but small. She chose the same song, "Where the Light Falls." It was her mother's song, and now it was hers. The first notes were soft, barely louder than a whisper. The audience leaned in. People at home watching from their couches sat forward, remote controls forgotten in their laps. The melody drifted through the room like it was being carried by something invisible. Her voice didn't shake. It soared. Higher, fuller, braver than anyone expected. Even Samuel, watching from backstage, held his breath. Halfway through, something strange happened. The judges, those same judges who had once wept underground, stood up. Not at the end. Right in the middle. Tears already on their faces. It was as if they couldn't stay seated while a song like that was happening. The crowd noticed. Phones came out. Gasps rippled through the audience. But Lila didn't see any of it. She kept her eyes closed, focused on every note, every beat, every word. She wasn't singing for a contract or a trophy. She was singing for someone who never got to take that stage. When the final note came, it held longer than anyone expected. Long enough to make the room go silent again. Long enough for people to forget they were watching a show. Then came the applause. Not just polite clapping. A roar. A wave. The kind of sound that shakes the walls and leaves people crying without knowing why. The judges weren't the only ones on their feet. Everyone was. Crew members. Camera operators. Even the host wiped his eyes. Lila stepped back, chest heaving, sweat on her forehead. But she smiled. It wasn't a stage smile. It was real. Tired. Satisfied. Samuel ran to her the second the cameras cut. He wrapped her in his arms, not caring who watched. "You were everything," he whispered. "Everything." But something else happened off camera. something the audience never saw. After the show, once the crowd had gone and the lights had dimmed, Lila was taken backstage to meet with the judges privately. No cameras. No press. Just them in a quiet room. She sat across from them, legs swinging under the chair. Her father stood behind her, still not letting go of her hand. The woman leaned forward. "That was the most powerful thing we've seen in all our years," she said. "You're going to be a star, Lila. The world is going to know your name." Lila looked down, then up again. "I'm glad you liked it," she said. "But I need to tell you something." The room went still. She reached into her coat and pulled out a folded piece of paper. She slid it across the table. "This is a letter my mom wrote," she said. "My dad kept it. I found it by accident." The woman picked it up and opened it slowly. It was short. A note Rachel had written before her audition. It said, "If this doesn't work, I still have everything I need, Samuel and Lila. They are my real dream." Silence filled the room. Lila's voice was calm. "I'm not going to compete again. This was just to sing her song. To finish what she started. But I don't want fame. I don't want tours or shows. I just wanted one moment. And I got it." The judges stared at her, speechless. The man finally said, "But you could go so far." Lila smiled. "I already did." She stood up, took her father's hand, and walked out. No speeches. No press conference. No promise of more. The cameras never showed what happened after. They didn't see Samuel lift her up in the parking lot, twirling her under the moonlight like she was still 5. They didn't hear her whisper, "Thank you for letting me try." They didn't see the way her father smiled, tears in his eyes, holding her close like he never wanted to let go. And maybe that was the real ending. Not the fame. Not the stage. But the moment between a girl, her voice, and the love that had always carried her. A note not meant for the world, but for the one person who always listened.